Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar of the Simulated Workplace Leadership Series. I'm very excited to be back with you today in the new year. Today, we're going to be talking about creative program design. How do we create programs that are sustainable and creative and innovative for our simulated workplaces? Again, this is Amber Ravenscroft. I was with you for the first webinar, and I'll be with you for this one, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. LaDotta Taylor for the final two webinars of this spring semester. So first and foremost, I want to say Happy New Year. We're so excited for 2018. We actually submitted a new proposal to bring this leadership program back to Calhoun-Gilmer's CTC Center in the new year. So we're very excited for that opportunity and to continue the good work with the students at your school and in your simulated workplace programs. So thanks for participating, and we look forward to a great year. As I mentioned before, I'm Amber Ravenscroft. If you watched the first webinar, you have heard my voice and you know a little bit about my background, but I am the manager of innovation for the Adventure Group. And I'm very excited to talk about program solutions and creativity in what you're designing in your simulated workplaces, because that's a lot of what I do for the Adventure Group. At the Adventure Group, I manage a variety of our programs, and that includes all the way from their development to their implementation and sustainability. So I manage multi-state entrepreneurship initiatives. We have over 30,000 students participating in entrepreneurship education through 5 states. I manage student leadership workshops very similar to the one that I'm implementing here with Calhoun-Gilmer. We also do that in Monongalia County, McDowell County, and Roane County, West Virginia. And then I'm very involved in computer science programming, particularly for young women. So I'll be talking about our program CS Adventure a little bit later as we discuss the steps behind designing programs. But I wanted to give you a heads up and a little bit of background about who I am and why I'm here today. So we're going to talk today a little bit about creative programs and how to design programs that are not only sustainable, but very interesting for what you're trying to do with your simulated workplace. Whether you're a carpentry simulated workplace, you're in electronics, you're in marketing, the core beginning of any successful organization is to switch their thinking to design thinking. And this is really a way to drive home anything from program development to product development. It kind of is a guiding step-by-step description of how you'll create creative programming that will really be sustainable. So design thinking is a discipline that uses the designer's sensibility and methods to match people's needs with what is feasible and viable in a business strategy. So that's a lot of words right now, but we're going to break it down. And I want to focus a little bit on feasibility and viability a little bit later. But really the focus is on switching it to human and user-based learning. So traditionally, what did program and product development look like in a regular business before we started switching over to design thinking? So you have an idea, a company comes up with a new product, and they say, my product's great, I'm going to sell it to everybody. So they do that. Then next step, they sell it. They develop a pricing structure and they sell their product. And then they get some feedback from the users about how well they liked the new product. So this is a very standard way of creating and selling products within any kind of organization, whether it's a service or an actual viable product that you can hold in your hand. That's the traditional way of designing programs and products. Design thinking kind of turns this on its head, and it says, we're going to ask the user for some input. What do you need or what do you want? And then the company is going to develop any possible product that will address that need. And then from there, they give it to the user who said, hey, I really need something like this to test it out, to make sure that it actually fixes the problem that the user introduced in step 1. So it's really thinking from a user-friendly dynamic about how can you create programs and products and services that are what your audience needs, rather than you create the product and you tell them that they need it. So I want you to look at it this way. Anybody can be a design thinker. All of us have designed at some point in our life something that solved a problem. And it doesn't have to be a tangible object, like, for example, the cell phone. That solved the problem of, we need to be able to connect when we're not in the house and we don't have a landline to use. Anybody who has ever solved a problem with a solution used design thinking because you identified the problem first. So this is a quote by Aditya Ramakumar. I probably butchered that and I apologize. But Cisco is huge in networking and technology, and we really want to focus on design thinking. Isn't this scary concept where you have to be overwhelmed by it? It's very simple, and at its very foremost, this quote really applies. And they say, all of us have designed something or the other at some point in our lives. We are all designers in some way. If you have a problem and you have thought of a solution that addresses that problem to its core, you are essentially designing a solution. It is as simple as that. So oftentimes the word design itself can be intimidating because we think that that is a huge step. But really, it's just taking a different approach to solving your own problems. So you are already design thinkers before we even approach looking at it in a simulated workplace kind of environment. So we're going to go over, there's going to be 5 steps of design thinking that I really want to hone in on and kind of set the stage of what we'll be doing for your challenge activity for this webinar. So I'm going to also go through these steps, and I'm going to apply it to a program that we use and that we implement at the adventure group called CS Adventure. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why we created this program and how it really affects us via design thinking. So step 1 of design thinking is knowing your target audience. Who are you trying to target? Who is having the problem? And why? Why is it a problem? And this is so important because it really allows you to put human experiences first and establish empathy with the person that you're trying to sell a product or a service for. So for CS Adventure, it was a after-school program, a summer camp actually, for students in grades 3 through 8, female students, to learn about computer science, coding, and to really have exposure into that field. And we knew that the problem was that there weren't enough young students, female students, interested in computer science. So who is having the problem? Young students in the grades, young pivotal grades of 3 through 8th grade, that's who's having the problem. We're not seeing them involved in computer science. And why is it a problem? So you'll see the emphasis there on why. Why? I want you to act like a 3rd grader or even younger. Whenever they ask a question like, why is the sky blue? And your father says, well, that's just because it's the way it is. And you say, why? That's what I want you to do with when you're thinking about design thinking in step 1. So our question was, why is there not a lot of girls interested in computer science all the way up through high school and into higher education? And we came back to this target audience, and they kind of mirrored each other. So the target audience was identified because we asked, why is this a problem? And we realized that at a younger age, these students are not getting the experience with computer science that they think that they need to really go into it in the higher levels of high school and higher education. So we thought maybe there's not enough opportunity. They need summer camps. That was another why. Why don't we provide them the opportunities to do this at the younger age? And then we came to the question of, is it something inside they're thinking about this? And then why don't they think they can complete computer science activities? And we found out that the actual core problem of why there's not as much involvement of female students in computer science and STEM subjects doesn't have anything to do with the students, but it has everything to do with a root problem, which is what you would do in step 2 of design thinking. You identify the root of this problem at its core. So for CS Adventure, the root problem that we were facing with getting girls involved in computer science was psychological barriers in the unconscious biases presented to them towards STEM and computer science from their parents and their teachers. So this is really a full-scale project. We realized we couldn't just send these girls to a summer camp and give them some computer science experience and expect them to go into high school and higher education and be computer engineers. That we had to address it at its very core of their parents and their educators need to understand that the way they're talking to the students about their future really puts a bias against them for STEM and computer science. And so we really identified and honed in on what's the problem to create our program, which I'll be talking about in the next couple of steps. But our root problem was the psychological barriers that the students were facing that were implemented on them by their parents and their educators, rather than the students' interests themselves. And so this is really important to think about, asking all those questions of why. More often than not, your answer to that first why is not going to be the actual root problem. And so you'll want to dig deeper and keep addressing any possibility of what the real effects are of your program. So step 3, we go through, we identified who we're targeting, we identified why we're targeting, and we got the root problem. We identified that. So step 3 is we're going to really ideate and write down as many solutions to the problem that we can think of. And I just want you to brainstorm in this stage. I don't want you to think that you are that you're not ready because you don't have that many. Just write down anything possible. And they really talk about going for the blue sky. So what is the best solution available in a perfect world if everything was in place to support it? What is the best solution available to you? Write that down and see if that blue sky option is something that you can really build in step 4, where you test your ideas. So step 3 is just ideation, writing down every possible solution to the problem that you've identified in steps 1 and 2. And then step 4, we get to test one. So you think there's one that's really, you're positive this might work, right? We test it out. You pick one of your ideas and you try it. You take notes on what works, what doesn't work, and how you could possibly improve it. Chances are it might not be the actual next step to really solving the problem. What we did with our computer science program with the young females was we had a 4-day session where on the 4th day, we talked to them about the psychological barriers. We really approached them face on and let them know that, hey, you're going to have these barriers, but this is how you overcome them. And by addressing that root problem straight up and right in front of any other kind of support of actual learning of the computer science standards, by addressing that unconscious bias and that psychological barrier within those girls, we saw so much more engagement and involvement with computer science and interest in moving forward with computer science programming in high school and higher education. So we were really thrilled to see that our idea of testing out, addressing these barriers straight on really proved successful in changing or shifting their mindset. So step 4 is testing. Try out what you think would work best to address your problem. In step 5, decide. So this is where you really evaluate the results of your test and you decide if that's the final solution or if you need to go back and you need to look at those other ideas you developed in step 3. And this is really just determining what's the best way to move forward and finalize a product or a service that really meets that need we identified in section 1. So as I mentioned in step 4, we really wanted to address these barriers face on. And after our evaluations and our pre and post surveys, we decided, hey, this is working. So our decision was to move forward with this program where we address unconscious bias in the students themselves. And we're going to expand on it a little bit when we develop future programming around it, in that we're going to take it a step further and we're going to address the teachers and the educators and the parents and let them know about these unconscious bias, to really just bring home the whole idea of it's not just the students that are thinking this way, it is the environment or different cues that have been presented to them that have caused them to have this need and this kind of not distaste of computer science, but a distancing of themselves from computer science. So we're really going to take that a step forward with our design thinking around the computer science program to take it a step further and iterate this whole process with an approach to parents and teachers. So we're going to talk a little bit about evaluation and how at this point in the process, you decide if what you're doing is actually successful. So I'm sure you've heard of SMART goals, but we take a little bit of a different approach on them. And from a nonprofit standpoint, the Adventure Group is a nonprofit itself. SMART goals and having measurable outcomes of any type of product, any product or program, is super important in ensuring sustainability. So if you can say for sure that your product increased this much, give you an example. So we, for computer science programming, we say our program increased students' likeliness to participate in computer science classes in high school and higher education by X%. That was an outcome that it was a tangible outcome. People could wrap their heads around it. They could understand what this looked like from a success standpoint. And that was a result of a SMART goal where we said we would like to increase a student's knowledge or interest in a program by this much percent. And that's super important in ensuring sustainability, because you can pull those out when approaching funders or when trying to sell your product to other companies, because you're really going to be able to say this, and this happens because we made this. And so the SMART goals and really setting goals around that is a great way to evaluate the success of your idea and really to sell it for future growth. I'm sure you've heard of these, but I really want to touch on them because they're going to be super important when we get to our challenge activity. So SMART, specific. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? Just write it out. What do you want to accomplish? Measurable, how to know when you've accomplished it. So metrics. So I need to get this much percent by a certain time. So I think for our computer science program, it was like, we want to increase a young female student's knowledge of computer science by 50%. And that was a lofty goal in itself, right? Because we wanted to say, you know, they're going to learn so much. So we really had that 50% as a metric. So when we could record it and they did their pre and post testing, we could compare it back to what our goal was. Attainable, what actions go into achieving this goal, and can you complete those actions? So it's really about making sure that when you set a goal, it's not too far out of your reach, that it's something that you can actually implement and complete successfully. Relevant, how does it solve the problem identified? So what you found out in step 1, your who and your why, are the goals that you're setting relevant to that need. Tied into your objectives for your product or your program, because that's going to be super important, again, in ensuring sustainability, so that they say, we had these goals, they were relevant to the need because of this, and here's how we can grow and move forward from them. And finally, time-based. When will you accomplish your goal? You don't want to say, I'm going to increase my knowledge of computer science in 10 years. That's possible, and you probably will, but people want timely measures so that they can really see how quickly you work and how positive your impact will have in such an amount of time. So we often have like a year to complete our educational programming. And then we outline different goals within that year so that we can kind of measure our own success and how on track we are with what we want our ultimate goal to be. So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And I'm going to challenge you to think about your simulated workplace and what kind of product or services you offer. And I'm going to challenge you to think about design thinking and identify a product or a program that you can implement in your classroom that would really focus on this design thinking, identifying a need, brainstorming a way that your simulated workplace service addresses that need, and deciding how to move forward with that. And we'd like you to set some SMART goals around that. It's really simple, and we hope that you get very excited about it, because there's a lot of different steps to this, and you grow a lot personally as well throughout the process. So I really love this graphic. I've always used this when talking about design thinking. In the middle of these 3 variables, we talked about this a little bit earlier when I said the definition of design thinking. First, we have viability, right? The capability of working successfully. So is it going to happen? Like, is from a business standpoint, is this going to be a product or a program that actually will work in your organization? Viability. Is it capable of working successfully in your environment? Feasibility. Is it possible to do this easily or conveniently? So how much work are you going to have to put into it? Are you setting the bar too high with what you're trying to get to, what your SMART goals are, with what problem you're trying to solve? Is it feasible for your organization? Do you have the capacity to complete this program? So they're very similar, viability and feasibility. Viability is more from do you have the resources available in your workplace? Feasibility is it even possible? And then desirability is this human component. Have you thought about the empathy of your target audience? And is it really something that they want or they wish for? Is it a necessary course of action for human nature to want to address this problem? And if you have a combination of all 3 of these, you have the human element where it's desirable. You have the ability in your workplace to implement it through viability. And it's something that you can do readily, and it's conceivable through feasibility. You're going to have innovation, and you're going to have a creative program that people are going to want to hatch onto, and they're going to want to grow that. And they're going to see the success that it can have as a business, as an idea, as a product, as a program. These 3 tiers of design thinking lead to innovation in any kind of workplace, whether it's a service or a product. So I really encourage you to be thinking about, as you design a program that you could possibly do in your simulated workplace, making sure that it is all 3 of these kind of components. I want to talk a little bit before I wrap up here and show you your challenge activity about social entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is a scary word, right? But everybody knows when you think of an entrepreneur, you think of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. You think of these iconic individuals who really shifted the tides of humanity and created these new industrial revolutions, the tech revolutions. They are the founders of the next step of where we can take our involvement in. And social entrepreneurship is the use of these techniques and startup companies and entrepreneurs to develop solutions that address issues within their environment. So more often than not, any entrepreneurial endeavor leads back to there was a need. Somebody recognized the need for some kind of tool or product or service, and they went and they built upon that. And social entrepreneurship in general is giving students and people the ability to identify problems within their communities and create change for themselves. So you get bonus points, although you're not actually graded on these, it's just for your personal development, but you get bonus points for the submission of this one if you actually complete and design a social entrepreneurship project that could be implemented by your simulated workplace. And I want to really highlight one that you've probably already done, and that's the tiny home project. I'm not sure if the Calhoun-Gilmer, I'm sure you probably have because you're like the STAR simulated workplace program, but the tiny home project itself is a social entrepreneurship initiative in that it identified a need within the community following the floods, and you all worked collaboratively to address and provide a solution for that need. So you should feel super fulfilled as a result of that program. And that's the goal of social entrepreneurship, is that you've solved a problem, you yourself are fulfilled by it. And it really is a sustainable effort to continue to move forward with solving and addressing social, cultural, or environmental issues. So I hope that you'll consider developing a social entrepreneurship project within each of your individual simulated workplaces at Calhoun-Gilmer CTE, because there's a lot of potential within your different industries to bring about community change as a result of that. So we're excited to see the ideas that you come up with when given the opportunity to identify your own issues and your own community focus areas and move forward with that. Sorry, I moved back, I apologize. So now it's time to go over what your challenge activity actually is going to be. And it's going to be very simple and it's really up to you. And just as a reminder, you don't have to complete all the challenge activities. We're going to have 4 webinars total. So you only are asked to complete 2 of those for our grant to continue the program. So again, if you don't want to complete this one, it's absolutely acceptable, but this is really a time for you to bring about real change in your community, in your simulated workplace. And I look forward to seeing, if you decide to pursue this challenge activity, the ideas that you'll come up with. And I encourage you, whether you're looking at this webinar individually, to ask the other employees in your simulated workplace for their input on this, to help think about what you can kind of do to bring about change and to identify design thinking projects within your own workplace. So it's really going to be really simple. We've created an online form for you that we just want you to design a program for your simulated workplace using design thinking. So thinking about need first and then designing a product to meet that needs. Like I said, bonus points if it includes components of social entrepreneurship, identifying a need in your community. So the form itself, all we have is what kind of need are you addressing, the target audience, so who is really the person that needs that, a project idea, so a brief summary of what your idea, how your idea would solve that problem, any anticipated obstacles, like you don't have funding, there's some government regulations that are holding you back, any kind of obstacle that you could think of would be identified, and then an evaluation component, so a couple SMART goals around what this would look like if you were actually implementing this program, what your SMART goals would be. And if you're serious, I want to highlight this real quick, if you're serious about implementing the project, and you need additional resources, I would love to help you find the resources to support that in your simulated workplace and really bring about change. So I hope that you will consider identifying problems that are relevant to you and your fellow peers and moving forward with how can you solve that in your simulated workplace program. It's going to be really simple. I'll send it out in an email with this webinar link to get you connected to the Google form that you'll use to fill it out. If you have any questions, please always contact me. I'll send my phone number to the teachers, but my email is on there at aravenscroft@edvgroup.org, and I'm always willing to help. I love the idea of social entrepreneurship and really getting students involved in their local communities. When I was in high school, I could have benefited greatly from having somebody encourage me to think about my experience in my school from a bigger standpoint, like how I could affect the community. And I really hope that you all take everything that you've been taught in this program and will continue to learn in this program, and develop yourselves personally and also professionally, and move forward and really help and grow your Calhoun-Gilmer greater community, because there are a lot of ways that you could impact the people in your community and the future of your community, even at such a young age as being in high school. So thank you. I look forward to seeing your design ideas, and I'll be in touch. All right. Have a great day.